Hi, I'm Terry. I'm a recovered alcoholic. I'm 25 years without a drink and almost the same length of time without a drug now. So I had a problem with alcohol and drugs for a long, long time. The end of my drinking was a term in prison, which was not very pleasant. But even when I came out from prison, I still went on drinking and drugging, and nearly at the end of it for me was I was living in Spain, and I went out for a walk with the dogs one day, and I had a bottle of gin in my pocket because I couldn't go anywhere without a drink in the end. And I remember dropping this bottle. It fell out of my hand when I was trying to take a drink, and I couldn't get back home without a drink. So I knelt down and started to lap the gin up, lacerating my tongue with the broken glass and watching the blood flow into the gin and turn it pink. But it didn't stop me. So you have to go a long way sometimes in order to find out that you can do something about it. And I became willing to change. So I joined a fellowship, found other people like me who pointed me in a direction to change my life, which I found very difficult to do because I knew what they were saying, but I didn't believe what they were saying. They said I could live without a drink, I could live without a drug, and it was all one day at a time, and that's all I had to do. But for me, I could see my life as a wreckage, and I needed to change everything right now and make everything back the way it was, make it good. When I had lots of money and I was flying high and life was terrific. And now I was absolutely broke, and I'd come back to England and from Spain, where I'd been living for the last 11 years, and was living with my mother. I didn't know where my wife was. I didn't know where my son was. I didn't have any money. And I can tell you I felt pretty sorry for myself, which was one of the great traits of drinking, self-pity and poor me's. So I continued going to this fellowship and hanging around with the people before and after the meetings that I would go to with them, and gradually started to see that there was something I could do about me. But when it came to seeing I could do something about me, I realised now, looking back all those years, that I didn't want to do something about me. I wanted to make it appear I'd done something about me so I could get back to things that I wanted. Because by then I'd found my wife and I'd found my child, and I wanted them back, and I wanted to go back and live in Spain, and I wanted everything to be the way I thought it should be. So I figured if I performed all the right actions and said all the right things, and I didn't drink and I didn't drug, then everything was going to be wonderful, and I would have back all my money, I would have back my wife, I would have back my child, I would be living back in Spain, and everything would be absolutely fantastic. And of course you can't, or you can, I suppose, you can learn tricks, you can learn ways of behaving that make it look as though you've changed when you haven't, and get away with it. But I think that only works for a certain length of time, because what you end up doing is discovering that you've lied to yourself about what you're doing. So finally I started to listen to people, and this wasn't after a week or 2 weeks or a month or 2 months. This was actually after a couple of years. I sort of realised that I couldn't continue the path that I was on. I'd gone back to Spain for various trials by that time for assault and battery, GBH and attempted murder, and I'd walked away from all of them, but at cost to me in my relationship and to the people around me. So I finally, I suppose, surrendered and thought my way of trying to manipulate everything isn't working. So I will try and do what people suggest. So I started to listen, and I started to do things, but with a different spirit of intent than the one I'd previously had, which was all about pretend and then get what I wanted, and it was accept that I may never get any of the things I want, but I need to do something about me. And that was a journey. That was a journey I've made in my time of being, as I call myself now, a recovered alcoholic, a recovered addict. I had to make this journey to look at myself. And in order to do that, I needed to follow certain guidelines, advice, suggestions from people that I trusted to and respected, and who seemed to be getting on with their lives in ways that I certainly wasn't getting on with mine. And so I started to do this. And I was working and I was making pretty good money, and I was now in a kind of distant relationship, but in a relationship with my ex, and I was having a good relationship with my son. And I continued that way for quite a few years, doing all the things that were suggested to me. But I realised after a certain length of time that underlying it all was, if I do this and I do this well, I'm going to get what I want. So I was still in the same place, but thought I was somewhere else. And it was only when I grew honest and really accepted then that maybe my son wouldn't be in my life, maybe my wife wouldn't be in my life, and maybe I wouldn't get back any of the things that I wanted. And I truly became honest. And that just took me time. It doesn't have to be the same for everybody, but it was the way it was for me. It took me quite a few years before I became honest. And that started for me when I met somebody else, another person who was helping me or could help me to look at my own behaviour. And that was a journey into honesty, the journey to realise that it wasn't people, places and things, because I spent all my life, before I was drinking, before I was drugging, I felt the way I felt because you said this or you did that, or somebody didn't give me what I wanted, or somebody didn't give it to me the way I wanted it. So it was always externals. It was always people, places and things that caused me not to feel good, me not to react well to situations. For the first time I heard that it was, if it was to be, it was up to me, that I was responsible. And now I'd read this, I can't say how many times, and I knew this, but knowing something and having a scotoma to it, a blind spot, not seeing it, so I know it, but I don't acknowledge it or do anything about it because I can manage to ignore it. But this was a journey where the first thing that the person said to me is, look, you're not an alcoholic. And I said, but I am, I've been drinking all these years, 31 years of drinking and 31 years of drugging, and look at the cost in my life emotionally and physically and spiritually and in every other aspect. And I said, no, you're not drinking and you're not drugging, you've recovered. And they showed me, in the fellowship I was, or the fellowships I was in, there were various books that we would read that would help us on our journey to being recovered. And the very first thing it said in one of these books is, we wrote this book to show you precisely how we recovered. I was like, right. Because while I was still just an alcoholic and just an addict, then I was still a victim. I was a victim of drugs, I was a victim of alcohol. So therefore I could still be a victim of other people. They could say things and they upset me. I feel upset because you said, I am a victim. But once I started to think differently and thought, yeah, I've recovered. My life is mine. If I drink, it will be a choice I make. It won't be because I'm an alcoholic and somebody said something bad to me today and hurt my feelings, and because of that I had to go and have a drink because I had this desperation to drink, because by then I didn't have any desperation to drink, I didn't have any desperation to drug, so I couldn't use those things as excuses. The things that people said or did, it was what I did with what people said and did, and that was a terrific revelation, because it suddenly meant I could be responsible for how I felt, because my life is not what I do or other people do. My life is how I feel, how I think, my emotions, my reaction to other people's thinking and emotions. So this was really something exciting for me. So I took to this and I learned certain things. I learned to be responsible. As a result of that, my relationships with people changed. I let an awful lot of people out of my life because I liked them, but I also had a need of people's approval, which I hadn't realised before. And there was people who would fawn on me, and they weren't good for me, because at the end of the day, they weren't fawning on me. They were just trying to get something they needed. I understand that. I don't have anything against it or against them. But it was letting go of them. It was letting go of other people I thought I needed to keep them in my life because of this reason or that reason. I could get this or I could get that, or this would be okay or that would be okay. And I let go of them. And I started to let into my life people who wanted to make the same journey that I was now making. And I had been making, by this time I was 8 years clean and sober. But I was making another kind of journey. I was making a journey out of self-righteous anger. I was making a journey out of blame. I was making a journey out of shame and guilt, and making a journey out of being a victim, a professional victim. So here I was saying now that I was recovered, but not really kind of understanding exactly how and what that meant. But I went on doing the things I did and listening to this person who was guiding me by this time. And they pointed things out to me that I'd never realised before, that when I'd say, I feel this or I feel that, they'd say, well, aren't you fortunate that you feel this? And I'd say, but I feel this because somebody said something to me. And they said, yeah, they may have said something and it may have brought up these feelings. But now, because they're your feelings and not their feelings, you can do something about that. You can choose the response that you have to that. And I thought, wow, that's true. And it didn't mean I got this overnight. And it didn't mean that it works every time. Even today, I can still get offended or hurt or claim anger over things that people say. But the other thing I realised along this journey is that any negative emotion where I blame and shame and become angry and resentful with other people is just a manifestation of fear. I am in some kind of fear that I will lose what I've got or I won't get what I want. And if I'm in that fear, I have to be a victim of the thing I'm going to lose or the thing I want. And it will prevent me from enjoying my day. So I learned that if I accepted responsibility for my feelings, that I could actually change them pretty instantly. So people can say things, as I've said, that will hurt or offend me. But instead of me now going, oh, they have hurt me and offended me, where I then have to be the victim, I can instead think, I wonder what it is in their day that isn't right, that they are saying or behaving the way they're behaving, that perhaps they don't feel very good. And so I can let go of what they've said and see that I don't have to be a victim of it. And I can choose a different thought. So instead of me being this victim and going, they have done this, I can choose a thought and say, I feel this and I feel that. And I can choose to direct that thought. So when I talk about being recovered, I don't people say to me, oh, if you're a recovered alcoholic, you can go and have a drink. If you're a recovered addict, you can go and have drugs. But the whole point of being recovered is I don't want to go and have a drink and I don't want to go and have drugs, because I don't want or need to change the way I feel by some external stimulants. I can change the way I think and I feel by an internal dialogue with myself. So I don't have to do that. And being recovered means that I now choose my feelings and my responses in this life. And what that allows me to do is it allows me to go around and be kind and helpful and loving to all. And I spent my life being a very, very angry man. I came into the recovery as a 46-year-old. And then when I kind of woke up, I realised I was a 46-year-old going on about 5 because of my behaviour. It was incredibly childish, incredibly immature, incredible victim-driven. Mummy, Daddy, you're not giving me what I want. Or Mummy, Daddy, please be nice to me. And it was like, well, if I grow up, I can parent myself, and I can be nice to myself, and if I can be nice to me, and I can choose the way I think and the way I feel, then I can be kind and loving to others. So I find when I wake up of a morning these days, I wake up happy because I've gone to bed feeling happy, and the last thoughts I have on my way into sleep is what a wonderful day it's been. How wonderful it has been to have woken up this morning and to have been of some service to others, to have felt happy, to have felt joyful, to have looked out at the sky, whatever's happening there, whether it's raining or it's sunny, and thinking what a beautiful day it is, what wonderful weather we have. And so I wake up in the morning already feeling happy. But before I open my eyes, I decide how I want my day ahead to be. I make a decision about it. I make a decision before I've even opened my eyes that I will deal with all the situations that come up in my day with grace and with love. And I've had the opportunity to prove that this can be done, because not everything that's happened over the last 25 years, or certainly the last years since I began this new journey, which is 17 years, I have proven by the fact that people around me that I love, family, have died, that things have happened to me. I've had some pretty serious operations, and I've had various things happen as a result of my previous behaviour. There's a price to pay, health-wise, emotional-wise, and every other way, for whatever we do along the journey of our life. So I've dealt with all those things with good grace. It doesn't mean I didn't feel pain. It doesn't mean I didn't feel loss, those that I love having passed on. But it meant that I could deal with it gracefully. I didn't have to become a victim of it. I didn't have to say, look at me, look what's happened to me. I could think about others and be helpful to others, and use my experiences to be helpful to others. So these are the kind of things that have happened, and this is what I mean about being recovered, that I do, as I say, choose how my day is going to be. And we talk about things like weather. People say to me, what is good and bad weather? You know, when it's bad weather, I feel bad. And I used to say that. And then somebody said to me one day, there was a Chinese philosopher several thousand years ago who said there isn't good or bad weather. There's only weather. So if I go, oh, it's bad weather today, I am choosing to say that it's bad weather. And therefore, if I choose to say that, I'll get the feeling that goes with it. So therefore, it will be bad weather. If I choose to say, oh, that's beautiful weather out there today, that's really wonderful, then I get the feeling that goes with that, and it truly is a beautiful day, and it's truly wonderful. So all the things are what I say they are. If I say you're not being kind to me, that's my decision that you're not being kind. You might consider yourself that you're being very kind to me. I just might decide you're not being. You might decide you're being loving when I decide you're not being. You might decide you're being considerate when I decide you're being inconsiderate. So I realise that all the things externally, I stamp them with how I think and how I feel, and then it becomes a reality. So therefore, I am creating the reality that I live in. I've had people say to me, I think you've gone mad. And if I have, then I'll choose that over what was called sanity. Because I'm happy every day. And the people who tell me I've gone mad go, you have to be angry about this or that. This has happened and that's happened and you must have an opinion about it. And I think opinions, and I don't know if this will go out on air, but opinions are like arseholes. Everyone's got one, and the only thing that comes out of them is shit. So I kind of avoid opinion giving if I can. I have feelings about things, and I think about them, and where I can do something about them, I do something about them. But I don't feel I have to rend my clothes to show that I'm having feelings about it. I don't feel I have to scream and shout and argue and fight, because that probably isn't going to change the way anybody thinks or feels. So there's no point in me getting in an argument with them, because all I do is be filled with self-righteous anger. And as I say, for me, that's just a manifestation of fear. So I quietly do what I can do in this world. And I don't get involved with the things that I can't actually do anything about by screaming and shouting about it. So I don't. So my days are wonderful. If, as I say, if that's insanity, then I choose that, because what other people seem to call insanity seems to mean that you have to go around blaming people, you have to be angry, you have to shame them, you have to make them guilty. I have friends who go on Facebook and then tell me that somebody's trolling them or doing this or whatever it is, this thing that happens, and telling them they're awful and all the rest of these kind of things. And why on earth would I bother myself with any of those things? I just can't see the point of it. So I have a wonderful life today. I don't have the things that I had before. I'm not wealthy, and I was at one point. But I do have a son who loves me. I have a relationship with my now ex that is distant, but it's not filled with blame and anger or any of those kind of things. I have good relationships with just about everyone I meet, really, because I have a good relationship with myself. So these are things that I feel I have got from learning that I'm not a victim, that I have recovered, that any thought, any feeling, any emotion that I have, they're mine, and I can change them. It doesn't mean that I stop feeling things like pain when my mother died, or grief or loss, but it does mean that I didn't have to wallow in it. I could just accept that that's a part of life, because it happens to all of us. I don't know anyone who's got out of this world or got off this planet and they've left it alive. If they have, then all power to them, but it's not something that I've experienced. So this is all part of life's journey, and I'm making it, and I'm making it with joy, and I make it with love. And that's every day, and it's been for a long, long time now. So people have said to me, one of these days you'll come off your pink cloud. Well, I don't think I've ever been on a pink cloud. I see lots of them when the sun goes down or the sun's coming up in the morning, but I've never been sitting on one. What I have is a constant state of quiet happiness and quiet joy. And this is something that anybody can have once they accept that they are responsible. Their thoughts are their thoughts, their feelings are their feelings. And so, as I say, it's 25 years now since a drug. It's 24 years since I've smoked a cigarette. Lots and lots of things have changed in my life. Once upon a time, I'd have gambled on two flies, walking up a window. But I don't gamble, and it's more than 25 years since I haven't done that. So all these addictions that we have, they're habits. They're just habits. All we need to do is get a different habit. And I discovered the habit of truly giving love, rather than giving it with, I'll love you if you love me, or I'll give you if you give me, giving it with no expectation of any return, and truly choosing to feel happy every day and joyful every day and grateful every day. And I'm truly grateful to the people I met in the fellowships that I've gone to over the years, and that have been friends and guides and teachers in my life. And here I am all these years on, and I'm now in my early 70s, and life is every day like it's just beginning all over. But instead of being an inconsolable child, I'm a happy, joyous and free adult. I'll leave it there.